From zero COVID to zero quarantine, China will scrap its 5-day mandatory quarantine for incoming travelers and will resume issuing visas for Chinese traveling abroad. The easing of some of the last vestiges of strict measures against the coronavirus pandemic has triggered elation in one of the world's largest travel and tourism markets.
A wave of travel euphoria hit China. After 2 years of enduring strict and bitter lockdowns, the country finally opening its doors to the world.
我听到这个消息还是挺开心的吧，就是其实也没有意料之中。
我觉得肯定会有回暖。然后我觉得很多人就是因为这么多年一些旅游的一些计划，甚至说一些出差的一些计划，都会因为这个而搁置。
Mere minutes after the announcement, online travel portals recorded a spike in searches for flights to popular overseas destinations, Thailand, Japan and South Korea topping the list. From tourism to business to financial markets, the rebound in confidence cheered by investors and business people across Asia, Europe and the US. The hope that easing of restrictions will propel growth in the world's second biggest economy. This after Beijing announced an end to its mandatory quarantine for inbound travelers starting next week. The current rules call for 5 days in a centralized facility and 3 days at home. Although Chinese traveling abroad must still take a PCR test in the 48 hours before departing. That requirement may be little comfort to some countries such as Japan, which are preparing for a wave of arrivals from China, where COVID-19 cases are surging.
中国からの入国者に対して臨時的な特別措置を講ずることといたします。できる限り早く体制を構築し、12月30日午前0時から適用することとしたいと思っています。
The concerns coinciding with official figures showing only one COVID death in the 7 days to Monday in a country of 1.4 billion people, where the coronavirus is now spreading largely unchecked.
And for more, Olivia Xiong joins us live from Chongqing. Olivia, we just heard in that package excitement, people saying travel plans that had been put on hold can now resume. What other responses have you heard on the ground from this announcement of easing travel of curbs?
Well, Besu, certainly excitement from various quarters here in China. After all, this comes after 3 years that China has largely remained closed off and shut to the world since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And speaking about travel euphoria, one travel platform, Trip.com Group, in fact said that searches for some overseas destinations went up by 10 times year on year in the first half an hour that the news broke with these new changes being announced by Chinese authorities as well. Immigration authorities today, following up on yesterday's announcement, releasing a notice that the approval of ordinary passports for Chinese citizens traveling abroad or visiting friends will be resumed in an orderly manner, they say. As we had seen in the past 3 years, that Chinese authorities had continued to tighten travel rules under zero COVID policy as it stopped issuing passports, or what it said were non-essential overseas travel. Authorities now have also said that it will resume processing visas for mainland residents traveling to Hong Kong for tourism and business. And so all these are big moves. And I spoke to several foreign business groups here in China as well, who have all, as we would expect, welcomed the move. The Singapore Business Chamber saying that this is a signal that China is keen to boost its economic development. The American Business Chamber also telling me that travel restrictions and these lengthy quarantines had been the top complaint of its member firms in the last few years. And so these steps are a big move.
People are very pleased. I think we knew it was coming, but it did seem to be a bit of a surprise that it came so fast. There's certainly pent-up demand. People want to get here. So I'm positive about that. The good news is that it looks like travel is possible. It looks like quarantines will be done away with. So that will mean you can do a trip in and out of China. So that's the first step. The second step is actually flights. There still are not that many flights coming in and out of China. So we're starting to hear some airlines talk about adding flights in March or April. So that's good news.
The European Business Chamber also telling me that while the latest moves may boost business confidence, China is still in the midst of its paradigm shift in trying to adapt to living with the virus. And so it's likely that their members, they say, will still be waiting to see how the situation evolves on the ground and before making any decisions to its long-term business investments here in China.
Olivia, as you mentioned, adjusting to living with COVID-19, every country that has had to do this has faced early spikes of infection from COVID-19. But officials in China defending continued relaxation of measures despite a surge in cases.
That's right. Health officials held a news conference earlier today in which they were asked, about some concerns that have been raised by Chinese citizens, particularly about the downgrading of the management of COVID from a type A infectious disease to a type B, infectious disease. And so the question was whether this would aggravate the current situation, as we have already seen hospitals being overwhelmed and mortuaries being overwhelmed as well. But a senior Chinese health official defended the move. He was keen to emphasize that categorizing COVID as type B at this downgraded level does not mean abandoning China's COVID controls, but it's more of or letting the virus rip through the country. He instead said that at present the priority should be on pivoting from preventing infection to medical treatment, and that, in the initial adjustment, there would be a sudden surge of infections, which may trigger some temporary insufficiency of supply. And so he said the focus right now should be on a few things, in particular, vulnerable groups like seniors, as well as getting them vaccinated. But there's also been calls by some health officials that, in particular, ICU beds need to be stepped up in the coming days.
Thanks for that. Olivia Xiong reporting live to us there from Chongqing.